So let's continue where we stopped. We're now up to 625 and see what we can find out when it comes to the proprioception of thought. To conclude a little bit, the previous lecture, episode 624, talking about proprioception of the mind and how the holistic thinking also applies to the mind, like it applies to all other aspects of reality. Let's see here. And proprioception is the feeling of oneself. And if we had proprioception, the brain would recognize the effect of what it has done. And of course this has a very big bearing on how reality is being created. We have a connection that's much more intimate in quantum physics than in normal physics. In normal physics, the subject doesn't take any part at all. Its foundation is no involvement from the subject. The subject is out of the calculation, so to speak. It's nothing to be calculated. And all the different constructs we did in science, philosophy, ideology, all of these religion, including actually to a certain extent, have all left out the subject out of the picture. It's not there. And I think it's quite interesting when it comes to the central perspective in painting, quite literally, even the person seeing the whole thing is out of that perspective. It's not there. The whole thing can and is made by an inhuman machine, so to speak. The camera oscura, later the Lumiere with the daguerreotype, I think, or what was that before? And you have a photo. And today we have video cameras and so forth. They all produce very peculiar a take on reality, where reality corresponds to poles having distance in between. But it's only when you take the subject out of reality when it's possible for you to get this picture of reality. I really like that expression we found from Tartan Tulku, that it's a locked focal point. Focal point has been locked somewhere. It only sees things predetermined. And Brunelleschi's box is the same. It makes the same result wherever you do, and that's one of the reasons it became a mechanical standard. Although it's not much of a mechanical instrument, not having moving parts or anything, it's mechanistic in principle, because it doesn't matter who's using the box. It will always produce the central perspective, and the central perspective means everything it ends by the horizon. And here is very good to use that as a conception, what happens on the subject side. You get the idea that, like the Brunelleschi and camera oscura things, have a localized position on the other side, on the canvas, on the thing you draw. And this is caused by the camera oscura. And the localized subject, localized consciousness, is very similar. It has different traits because of this. Apart from having reality localized somewhere in the head, inside the head often it's called, where a little homunculus is seeing everything. It is passive. Seeing is a very lively thing. It takes effort to see. Whereas watching TV or watching inside of the Leskin box doesn't take any effort. You just paint what is projected point by point to the canvas by the camera obscura. And I think this picture of the object also completely changed our idea of the subject. It goes hand in hand. An effective change of the object changes instantaneously, simultaneously, the subject. The subject we have today is formed by how we perceive the object. Therefore, the camera obscura, I think, is a very good thing to show what we used to have. It's like classical physical picture corresponding to the picture that David Bohm gives us with implicit, explicit and hollow movement. And I think it's an excellent instance here to mention what this does to consciousness, and which is brought later into when we started to understand we have memory, as it come to be called, in the brain, and how that was localized from the beginning. And we're going to go through that development, and I will make a lecture with Carl Pre-Brown about this. Thank you for the tip, Kalle. So when we start here in consciousness, still on the Boomian side, we continue to Carl Pre-Brown later to the next lecture, or the second next lecture. Well, last time we were talking about passion. I think there's a very good point there Bohm makes, because passion is something that's gone out with the window in modern culture. Because we have this passive view of who we are. Passion doesn't really fit. We need to be passive, half mechanistic. Passion, especially if it's not controlled, it could have a very deviating function, can mess things up. It doesn't really work in this society in that way, not when we're not controlling ourselves, when we don't have any direction. And it could be that passion could have a place again if we learn how to control the mind. We learn how to direct the mind. That mind is a force in itself. It's not something, not similar in many ways to the object being passive, just be out there, whereas the object is being received, the mind is the receiver of what's out there. They both have a sort of passivity that is not true to reality, which is very active. So passion disappears. In this passivization, passion doesn't have any pace. Passion can also come when we feel that it's time to do something that goes beyond self-preservation. And I think that everything that goes beyond self-preservation, self-interest today, is something that is done by the group and instantiated into the individual by the group or by the ones who's in authority. And I would say like healthcare and the army and fire brigades and those things is not something somebody wanted or learned to appreciate, but it's just enforced on people. They don't take any passion today, and therefore there is no passion. But wouldn't it be great if we let passion into our system again, because then we could have some larger force than what is possible within only self-interest. Our goals could be that much greater, they could be immense, they could be infinite. You could do things for the group, you could do things for the nation, you could do things for the world, and you can do even more. You can do for all future being and all past being, and that is passion for me. And when I read it written by Paul in his very lovely article about consciousness and proprioception, I remember so vividly what I read in the Renaissance about great artists, and especially Caravaggio, who went for his tour trying to escape conviction for a murder. He did commit, but he didn't have an option in the case. Kill somebody in self-defense. And he went to the Pope, he went to all the clerical, he went to the different princesses of the different states, and he ended up in Malta in the end, asking the charioteers, the knights of Malta, to help him. And it's obvious he has a passion for everything. He's a passionate person, even if he goes around to save his own life. His passion goes beyond himself. And then you don't have to do separation between what you want to do with your own life and to do with other people. So passion does not have to be some self-effacing procedure. It would actually give you the energy you need to have a richer, more fantastic life. Without passion, we cannot think straight when our self-esteem or self-interest is in danger. And that's the fact of life. I think the Milgram experiment shows that it's impossible, even if nothing is at stake, almost nothing. We cannot make a decision against our present self-interest. We need something more to take us out of that. And that's implicit in the situation. I think Bohm is incredibly acute here by pointing this out, how important there is to have a passion. Because without that, we're in a sense doomed to do what other wants us to do. It's impossible to escape that trap. With a passion, we can go further. So proprioception together with passion frees the mind from the intellectual emotional disorder, and therefore heals it from irrationality and self-deception. The intellect becomes orderly, rational and clear, and therefore will become intelligent as well. The emotions also will begin to express a more subtle response to true and meaningful things, such as love. As a result, the human mind will be creative rather than destructive. This amounts to transformation of human consciousness on a deep level. And it just goes to show that we are in danger of our intellect these days. Not only by fixating on what I would call representationalism and this very, very thought-killing and thought-minimizing reductionism that makes thought to be nothing at all other than passive does its job. My thinking is we can reach much higher and go further. Passion is one of those things that can lead us to that. Or beyond representationalism. It's interesting that these things that I've explained, like representationalism and the idea of outer world, they go hand in hand, and they, one by one, they, so to speak, enforces themselves. And for every step, the outer reality becomes more and more taking shape of something independent. The mind becomes more and more independent. But it cannot become independent, and you can't have a feeling of being independent. What is happening, you get more and more, you lack more and more proprioception from the body proprioception from something. These can be healed when you come to understand the effect of explicit and implicit. That will make turnover, that will turn things over to a more energized state, because there's a lack of energy in this. And so if you don't have passion, you don't have the energy to do things. You won't get up early in the morning and do whatever takes you to better the world and better yourself. That won't just won't happen without passion. This passionless thinking changes us to the core, and it makes rationality and intelligence to disappear, go out of the window, not being of any importance at all. Can still be that in a non-proprioceptive system that thoughts know about emotions, but it doesn't generally realize that it has a profound effect on them. It doesn't have an understanding how emotion, and especially emotionally laden words and concept, have an acute effect. This innocence or naivety, it's very obvious these days, but we have so many cases with corona, and people continue to think about it, mention it, and they are oblivious to the fact that that share of thinking changes them profoundly in a negative direction. Whereas people in general think it's very good to take information. You should then further that information by repeating it. It's even better. I would say it's none of the above, because you put a firm picture into your head and you can be sick and you die. And that will actually lead to further sickness, lack of health, and lack of power to withstand infirmities, I'd say. It's interesting when Paul mentions that when you don't have any awareness of what the thinking leads to, you will have a problem of not being able to reveal where the thoughts are going. You will be the victim of unconscious guidance that could lead you completely astray. And you will have thoughts that are false, thoughts that try to convince you to do things you really want to do, but these thoughts come left to like I build something. So let's go to movement. According to the dictionary, the word movement is derived from move, which means to change position, to prompt or to stir. So the word movement suggests much more than just a physical displacement. The word prompt means to inspire, to suggest, or to incite. The word stir means to set in motion, to agitate or to excite. Here you want to use the notion of movement to include all that. In connection with the body, we emphasize the aspect of the physical displacement. In connection with thought, we emphasize. If we think of thought as inclination forward, thought in motion, and an emotion or excitation. Method. I think I need to take a nap here. Say thank